to pursue a short-term, whether you plan to pursue a short-term or full degree program in the U.S., Education USA has the resources you need in your 5 steps to US study. You can learn more about these 5 steps at educationusa.state.gov. And now I would like to introduce you to our guest, Stephanie Siptak Rabnat, the Deputy Chief of Mission at the U.S. Embassy in Mexico. A career member of the Senior Foreign Service, Stephanie arrived July 20, 2021 for her third assignment in Mexico. She most recently served as Deputy Executive Secretary in the Office of the Secretary of State. Stephanie served also as Chargé d'Affaires at the U.S. Embassy Singapore from January 2017 to July 2019. She previously served as Minister Counselor for Public Diplomacy at U.S. Embassy, Mexico City, Deputy Chief of Mission in Bamako, Mali, and Senior Deputy Director of the Office of Public Diplomacy in the Bureau of European and Eurasian Affairs. Other assignments include Tunis, Tunisia, and the U.S. Mission to the United Nations in Monterrey, Mexico. In November 2015, Stephanie was awarded the Department of State's Edward R. Murrow Award for Excellence in Public Diplomacy. Prior to joining the Foreign Service, Stephanie was an officer in the U.S. Navy. She was a member of the International Women's Forum Leadership Foundation 2011-2012 Fellows Class. She is a graduate of Georgetown University's School of Foreign Service. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for accepting our invitation and for being here today with us. And the time is yours.
Thank you, Yandi, for that introduction. And thank you so much for letting me kick off this great event. Whenever Maria Mercedes asks me to do something, I have to say yes, because she and her team do such incredible things for Mexico and for the United States and for the entire region. I think maybe I'll just start with a couple thoughts. Whenever I'm asked to address women during International Women's Month, I always feel a little bit just humbled, because I realize that every woman on this call has a story. Every woman on this call has been amazing, has been a hero, has achieved things, and it continues to do wonderful things and to be role models for other people. And so I'm always humbled to be asked to speak to women, because women are always amazing, no matter where you are. And you know, I always know that I would just love to hear what each of your stories are as well. So, you know, the topic today that I've been asked to speak about is women's role in public diplomacy programs. So I think that the best way that I can answer that question is, or to begin to address that topic, is just to speak a little bit about my career. So for those of you who are familiar with diplomatic service, in the United States, when we join the U.S. Diplomatic Corps, we can be one of five specialties if we're generalists in the Foreign Service. In our Foreign Service, we have computer technicians, and we have doctors, and we have nurses. So those are called specialists, and they're called specialists because nobody can do their work but them. But on the generalist side, and we're called generalists because the idea is that we can take on different roles at any given time. There are 5 specialties. If you're a generalist, you can be a consular officer for our Mexican colleagues. Those are the folks who manage the visa section, and they manage American citizen services, and they give the passports and all that. So that's the consular section. You could be a political officer, where you're working on following the politics of a country, doing the reporting required by Congress on human rights, on international religious freedom, working with NGOs and those kinds of things. You could be an economic officer, where you are following everything to do with economics. So all of the trends and issues like, science, technology, health, and energy, electricity, which is a big issue here in Mexico. You can be a management officer, and they really are the backbone of our work in that they are the ones who manage these huge buildings. They manage our human resources, our financial issues. So that's the management cone. Or you can be a public diplomacy officer. And that's what I chose to be very early on in my career. And I chose that because, to me, public diplomacy is about that intersection of policy and reaching out to the countries in which we live. So you have to know, in order to be a good public diplomacy officer, you have to understand what are the policies that you and your government are trying to promote in any country. But then on the public diplomacy side is you have to know how to connect with people so that you could advance your priority objectives. And to me, that is one of the most intellectually stimulating things that one can do as a diplomat, is not only know that what we're trying to achieve, but how to communicate it, and who are your partners in achieving the goals, and where's that Venn diagram in any country I've served in, where what we're trying to achieve is the United States and where the host country is trying to work on something. In that space, where can we find partners to move forward together? And so as Yandi mentioned, I have served in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, and here in Mexico. And in all of these different countries, whether it was Tunisia, Mali, Singapore, or Mexico, or when I was working on European affairs, it's intellectually stimulating to figure out where that cross section is. But most of all, it's exciting because you get to do what sometimes women do best, which is to connect with people and to communicate, but most importantly, to listen. Because I think to be a great diplomat, to be great at whatever you do, you have to listen first to understand where people are coming from, and then you can make the connection, and then you can achieve your goals together. So the issue about women in public diplomacy, I do think that, I have great, and including the public affairs officer here and colleagues of ours at the library, the Benjamin Franklin Library, we have wonderful male colleagues, super talented, and an honor to serve with them every single day. But I do think that being a public diplomacy officer for myself as a woman was a place that I feel very comfortable, and I've been very excited to serve because of that intersection of the intellectual understanding of what we're trying to achieve, but then the need to communicate it successfully and to find partners. So I think I can stop there as an intro, Yandi, unless you want me to go on. As communicators, we can just speak for hours.
Yeah, go ahead. You can keep your conference for now. Thank you.
Okay. The other thing that I thought that I might share with you all, just to also segue into some of the discussion that we can have, is the kind of work that I've done as a public diplomacy officer for the United States. So I began my work really in my third tour in Tunis, Tunisia, where I was the assistant public affairs officer at our embassy. And it was a very difficult time in our history, in that we had just gone into Iraq for the second time. 9/11 had happened, and then I arrived into Tunisia. And we were dealing with our presence in Iraq war, the constant concern in the Arab world about US intentions. We had to deal with the scandals of Guantanamo Bay and Abu Ghraib. And it was my job every day for 4 years to go out and to tell the story of America and to try to explain what we were doing. Some things we couldn't, like Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo, it was very difficult to explain, but just to try to connect with audiences at a very stressful moment in US Arab relations. So it was challenging work. It was exciting work. But at the same time that I was trying to explain US foreign policy in Iraq and in the Arab world, at the very same time, we were working on the issues of press freedom that actually led to the Arab Spring. So as you all know, if you follow the issues in the Arab world, there were real issues on human rights issues and issues of freedom of expression, freedom of press, freedom, lots of freedoms in Tunisia and other parts in the Arab world that led to the Arab Spring. So I was there before the Arab Spring, and the Arab Spring started in Tunisia. And we were really working on press freedom and trying to support journalists in telling the stories. And it was always, and I'm always happy to talk about this, it was ironic because at the same time that these journalists were my friends, and when they were in trouble, they would call me to get the US government to weigh in. At the same time, every newspaper article they wrote was critical about the United States and what we were doing in the Arab world. So you have to deal, to be able to deal with that tension and that irony in your work, but to also know that these are your friends and these are valuable human beings. And so that was one very exciting dimension of my first public diplomacy tour. I then moved to Bamako, Mali, which is in West Africa. And there we were working a lot to combat a growing terrorist threat that was coming out of Algeria. And so we were doing a lot to try to connect with the Muslim population, which is 90% Muslim in Mali, but really trying to connect with them to understand what their concerns were and to try to convince a large population to not go in the way that some of the jihadists were going. So I spent 3 years there really connecting with Malian people, loving their culture, loving everything about being there, but working on this very difficult issue of trying to connect with a Muslim country again, while we were still in Iraq and working on difficult issues in the Muslim world. So that was fascinating work. Then I went back to Washington, and I was in charge of all of our public diplomacy outreach in Europe and Eurasia. So that was from Russia through the Balkans to Turkey and all the way to Western Europe and NATO and the EU. And that was trying to figure out how we use public diplomacy tools to achieve our goals in each of the countries. And each of those countries are very different, and what we're trying to achieve is very different, but also what we're doing in EU as a whole with NATO. So again, very intellectually stimulating, but also exciting, because everything we do, we worked with students, we worked with journalists, we worked with cultural partners, and a lot just about the person-to-person connection. And then I'll stop here because then I've probably gone over my time, Yandi, but I came back here to Mexico City, where I was the cultural affairs officer and the public affairs officer, and that's where I got to work with all my beloved people at the Benjamin Franklin Library and the staff here. And what we were really working on, it was under Peña Nieto and President Obama, was to increase academic exchange between Mexico and the United States, which is exactly why, if Education USA asked me to do something, I have to do it, because Education USA is such an important partner in that, and COMEX is also. I don't know if Hazel's on, but really what we were focused on here was just increasing the numbers of Mexicans studying in the United States and increasing the numbers of Americans studying here in Mexico, because I firmly believe that the connections you make as a student, the connections you make in a classroom, are the connections that will last the longest in your life, because you're there learning together, discovering the world together, and growing together. And by doing that, you create a connection that I think makes a bridge between countries that lasts forever. So is that good, Yandi, or you want me to keep going?
Thank you. We have a few questions that we would like to ask you. So if that's okay, we can just go ahead and ask you the questions. So
sure.
I'll give the time now to my colleague Edith, and she will be in charge of doing this Q&A section. Thank you.
Thank you, Yandi. Hi, Stephanie. Well, just a couple of questions that we have in here. Well, one of the attendees is asking for any advice or any tips that you could share for women that want to pursue this path too.
Well, I would say, and I just was speaking to another group, and I was saying that I was reading an article about the Supreme Court Justice nominee, Ketanji Brown Jackson. And one of the things that she observed was that her parents, and I will quote, "My parents knew that it was essential that I develop a sense of my own self-worth that was in no way dependent on what others thought about my abilities." And I just think that's such a profound statement. So I think as women, no matter what you want to do in your life, whether you want to be a diplomat, whether you want to be a soldier, a sailor, whether you want to be a teacher, an academic, whether you want to run your own business, whether you want to be a mom, just know that you have this innate self-worth that makes you capable of doing whatever you set your mind to. My mother, I can't ever speak about my life without talking about my mother. She had a profound influence on me, but she always just said, since the time I was little, can't is for dead people. And I don't know how that translates into Spanish, but the idea is that the only one who can stop you from achieving something is yourself. And so when you decide this is what you want, then just go for it and know inside of you that you're worth it, you're worthy of it, and you're capable of it. I was in the Navy, and sometimes I would be asked to do something physical that, normally I might think, well, I can't do that. But all I could think was like, yeah, I can do it, because my mom said can't is for dead people. So I'm not dead. So if I have to put on, we had to put on this whole firefighting ensemble and pull this huge hose and know how to put out a fire. And when I saw it, I was like, how am I going to do this? And then you just put it on and do it, because there's no other option. So that's what I would say to any woman that wants to do anything in life, is just believe that you can do it. Tell yourself you can do it, and then you'll find a way to do it. Don't ever put limitations on yourself. And if you don't put limitations on yourself, then nobody else can. Because somebody can look at you and say, Edith can do it, but Edith knows she can do it, and she's just going to do it. And it doesn't matter what anybody else says. So I guess that would be my advice.
Thank you. Great advice. We have another question in here. It says from another of our attendees, and it says, do you consider that women tend to be supportive of each other in positions like yours?
So it was funny. I was just on another panel with women ambassadors. Although I was so embarrassed, I said, I'm not an ambassador. But anyway, they allowed me to be on that panel with them. And they asked that, they said, what has been in your impression? Do women support each other or do they not? And we all said women support each other. The Colombian ambassador, who was a little bit older, so I'm 50 and she was in her 60s, and I'm not telling tales because she said how old she was. She said, when she was first entering her professional world, there were fewer women. So maybe at that point, there was more competition, not only, not particularly between women, but for women to have their place in whatever this company was, whatever the role was. So if you were competing with men to get there, then you're going to compete with women to get there, right? I do find now, and I'm grateful and thankful to God, that there are lots of women in the workplace. And what I have seen is women supporting women, but I've also seen women supporting men. I don't know that it's gender specific, but I also don't believe this previous trope that women are tougher on women or that women don't make space for each other. I just don't think that's true. It hasn't been my experience. I hope it's not yours or anybody on the calls either.
We really hope that too. Another question, it says in here, what was your expectation when you started to work in public diplomacy?
That is such a good question. I'm not sure that I had an expectation, more of a conviction, and it is why I've been in government service for 30 years now. I was commissioned in the Navy when I was 20 years old. I love my country with all its flaws, and some could say it's more flawed now than any time else, but with all its flaws, I love the United States. And as I said to the diplomats, if you're a Canadian diplomat, I'm sure you do it because you love Canada. If you're a Mexican diplomat, you do it because you love Mexico. Like, we diplomats get up every day because we love our country. And so for me, public diplomacy is about representing the very best of America around the world. and listening to what people think about us, engaging with them, sending back to Washington the things Washington needs to know. But really, somebody once said that to be a diplomat and a US diplomat is to be a sample American. And so for me to wake up every day and get to be a sample American, and to do that by telling our story and connecting with audiences in public diplomacy, I think that's what I wanted to do. I'm not sure what I expected I would be doing, but it's what I wanted to do.
Thank you. We have in here another question. It says, what do you consider was your biggest challenge or has been your biggest challenge in your career, and how did you overcome them?
So I think the biggest challenge for many of us women is balancing. I don't even think it's balancing. It's trying to find out the equilibrium between being a mom and a wife and having a career. And I don't think that is unique to being a diplomat. I think the one unique thing about being a diplomat is we move every 3 years. So if you can imagine finding the love of your life, which I did, and having wonderful daughters, which I do, but then asking them to move every 3 years, and for my husband to restart his career basically every 3 years because we've moved to a different continent, which is basically what we did, is we moved to different continents every, the difference was when I was in Mexico. I just went to the United States. But I think that has been the biggest challenge for me, is making sure that the choices I make professionally made sense for my family as well. And the one thing that I've learned and that I try to share with the women and men that I mentor is that I have found in my life, and it will be different for everyone, that making the choice for my family has always been the right choice. So as I mentioned, I was the public affairs officer in Mali, but then I went back as the deputy chief of mission later, which was kind of a dream come true to be the #2 in an embassy where I loved all of the people who worked there. I loved the issues we were working on. I loved the country I was serving in. But then the terrorists moved from the north south, and they threatened to overrun the capital city. And so they evacuated all our families. So my husband and my daughters left, and I was there. And so I had to make the choice of staying there for 3 years without my family, or to decide to curtail, which was a very important job, and to leave. And I decided to choose my family. And por casualidad, I ended up in Mexico, which was a great tour for me. This is where I actually earned the award that Yandi mentioned on my resume. And I just realized that by not putting my career first, but being in a place that was right for my family, and by being with my family, I could be happy. When you're happy, you're successful, and then good things come. So I think choosing happiness is always really important. Hopefully you can find the path to be happy in your career. But if you can find that, then I think you'll be successful, because you're going to love what you do. You're going to love who you are. You're going to love what you're doing, and you're going to be amazing at whatever you're doing.
Great, great. And I think that is something that most of the people don't expect to hear, but great. So another question, it says, since you've been here, since you've been in so many countries with different cultures and values toward women, how do you adapt to these changes?
I don't think we do adapt, quite honestly. It's a very interesting question, but I think part of being an American diplomat is you get to be America wherever you are. What you do have to be is to be sensitive to the context in which you work. But it doesn't mean, and in fact, one of the things that I love about being a US diplomat is that wherever we serve, we speak out for women's rights. We speak out against gender-based violence. We speak out for human rights. And so, I've been very fortunate to serve in places like Tunisia and Singapore, where women's rights are very advanced. Tunisia, very interesting enough, Habib Bourguiba in the 1950s, who was their president, he stopped polygamy. He gave women absolute equal rights. So I was very fortunate to serve in Tunisia. In Mali, the situation of women is very different, but women are so powerful in that society in their own right, because they are the ones who take care of the families. And so I think it's recognizing power in women wherever you are. It's representing our beliefs, which are women deserve to be at the table. Women deserve to be respected. Most of all, women do not deserve to have any violence meted out on them. And then finding a way to promote that within the context in which you're working. And I think, and I believe Mexican diplomats have that same power wherever they go. And I'm proud to have Mexican diplomats as our allies on these issues as well.
Great, thank you. Well, I have just two more things in here. It says, what soft skills do you consider women should develop to succeed in diplomatic programs? Here the person mentions, I love what you said about listening, engaging, but I was wondering, what do you consider you should work on? I am a student on international relations.
So, a couple things. I was a student in international relations. So first thing, read everything they assign you. I didn't read everything that was assigned to me, and I regret it because first of all, just be curious. That's the most beautiful thing about international. I mean, I think about any job, right? If you can be curious, and if you hear something and it immediately makes you want to ask a question about it, I think that's an important skill. To be curious with an open heart, to ask questions, to hear an answer, and not to give your point of view. We all know those people who like, I have a question, and then for 5 minutes they tell you what they're thinking. You know, I think, so curiosity, very, very important. Humility in understanding you will never know everything. You're never going to understand every point of view that's out there, but if you're curious and you keep listening, you will learn every single day, and it will make you smarter and better. And then communication skills. So writing, learn to be a good writer, learn to be a concise writer. And also how to be comfortable expressing yourself, both in small groups and in larger groups. And I think the comfort in being able to express yourself is by going back to that self-worth. If somebody has asked you to speak, it's because they're interested in what you have to say. And I think you have to own that. If somebody has asked you to speak, no, it's because you're valued and you're valuable and you know something that they want to hear. So if you can walk into a room understanding you may not have all the answers people throw at you, but you have the answers that you have, and you have the things that you know, then bring that into the room and that self-worth and that self-confidence, and just let it go. And like, be yourself, to give your point of view, listen to what people are saying, think about it. Part of the reading a lot is learning to think in different ways, and to think quickly about different things. So I think those are the main things. So curiosity, communication skills, and the humility to be okay with not knowing everything. I'll tell you, every time I've moved to a new country, even when I've moved back to Mexico, there's things I have to learn. This is my third time in Mexico, but Mexico changes and I've changed. And so every day you're learning. Every day I learn something new, I have to say, every day. And I love that. And it doesn't make me embarrassed to say, hey, I didn't know that. And I'm glad to know it now.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. This was all from my side, but thank you for your words. They were really great. Thank you very much. Yandy?
Great, thank you. Bye. Thank you so much, Edith, for the questions section. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for accepting this invitation today. Before we let you go, is there anything else you would like to add?
No, I just want to congratulate Education USA, Comexis, the public affairs officer here, public affairs section for bringing women together around the very important issue of education and, you know, all of the doors it opens to us. Just one last story. So when I was graduating from high school, I told my mother I did not want to go to university. I wanted to be an airline stewardess because I just wanted to travel and to be glamorous and travel. And so my mom said, no, you're going to go to university. So then I saw the brochure for Georgetown School of Foreign Service, and I thought, you study international relations, you learn languages, maybe that will get me traveling after. And now it's been 30 years of having just a beautiful, blessed life representing the United States. So just be open to the possibilities and believe in yourself, and then just go out there and be amazing, because you all are amazing already. It's getting the skills to now be amazing in a new place and to just change the world wherever you are. So that's what I would say. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Stephanie, for taking the time from your busy agenda and for giving us this conference to share your experiences. We know that everything you have accomplished will keep inspiring other women as well. So thanks again for being here today.
Thanks. Bye.
Just a couple of reminders for everyone in our audience. Please remember to visit our website to review the agenda for the next 2 days, where you can also learn a little bit more about our guest speakers, and feel free to invite and share it with your friends. Also, the second part of today's event will start in a few more minutes. We'll start at 6 p.m. You can stay in this link, or you can come back in a few more minutes. Thank you so much, everyone, for your participation and your questions and interactions. Thank you, and we will see you again in a few more minutes at 6. Thanks. Welcome back, everyone. For those of you just joining, please notice that on your screen, you can choose to listen to our event in English or Spanish. You just have to click on the interpretation button. Also, if you have any questions, make sure to use the Q&A feature also at the bottom of your screen, and we will have some time at the end to review them. My name is Yandi Reynoso, Education USA Advisor in Mexico City, and I will be also moderating this part. And now we will have the second part of today's event. We will have a conversation to learn more about women leaders and their impact in the academic and cultural cooperation programs. Before we start, I would like to introduce our two guests. Give me a second. We have today with us Hazel Blackmore, Executive Director of the Mexico-US Commission for Educational and Cultural Exchange, COMEXUS. Since 2012, Hazel has served as the Executive Director of COMEXUS, which manages the Fulbright Garcia Robles Grant programs. She has been a professor and researcher at the Department of International Studies of the Instituto Tecnológico Autónomo de México, ITAM, for 20 years, where since 2001, she has taught courses related to the domestic politics of the United States. She has a bachelor's degree in international relations from ITAM and a master's in political science from Boston College, a degree which she studied with the support of a Fulbright Garcia Robles Scholarship. Maria Mercedes Salmon, Education USA Regional Coordinator for North America, Central America, and the Caribbean. Maria Mercedes oversees a network of 56 Education USA advising centers in 25 countries. She holds a bachelor's in International Business Administration from Universidad Católica de Santiago de Guayaquil, and a master's in international affairs with a specialization in public relations from Ohio University, where she attended as a Fulbright grantee. Thank you so much, Hazel and Maria Mercedes. It's a pleasure to have you here today. And let's just get started with our first questions. I want to start by asking you, and I know both of you will have the opportunity to answer these questions. What do you do in your programs, and how long have you been doing this? If you could talk a little bit more about your responsibilities and day-to-day tasks. If you can start, Hazel.
Of course. Good afternoon, Yandi. Thank you very much for moderating this session, and thank you for to the Education USA team for inviting me to have a conversation with my good friend Maria Mercedes. The difference this time is that it's moderated and time limited, but otherwise we would speak for hours. But thank you very much, and thank you for your question, Yandi. As you just mentioned when you read my bio, I have been in this role for 10 years. And what we do at the Commission is we try to enhance understanding between Mexico and the United States through the individuals that we grant. And we grant 4 kinds of individuals. We grant students to do graduate degree studies. We grant teachers to help teach others, teach Spanish in the United States and teach English in Mexico, but also develop different educational programs or educational projects. We also grant scholars to do research in both countries, and we grant professionals to enhance their development, their personal and professional development. So through that, we try to create different networks between nationals of both countries and develop more understanding. Why we do this? For several reasons. Of course, one is helping these individuals advance in their careers, in their personal development, but also because the relationship between Mexico and the United States, it's very important, and we need people to understand the culture of each other. We need individuals to understand the many different links that exist in economics, in society, in history, in culture. So that is what we do.
Thank you, Hazel. Maria Mercedes.
Thank you, Hazel, and thank you, Yandy, for the invitation as well. This is a very exciting opportunity to be engaging with the public who's interested in learning more about the type of work that we do in the context of in strengthening the relationship between Mexico and the United States. And Education USA is, as Stephanie mentioned earlier, one of the public diplomacy tools that that the U.S. government uses to strengthen such relationships by providing information to the public and addressing the needs and also creating spaces in which potential students can complete an application process successfully to the US. So in my role, as Yandy also read earlier, I've been the Regional Educational Advising Coordinator for 10 years. I moved to Mexico 10 years ago. I'm originally from Ecuador, as you also read, where I had worked for the Fulbright Commission in Ecuador for 10 years before that. When I moved to Mexico, my role became to oversee the operation that we have, as you already explained, with 25 countries in my portfolio. And what this means is that my responsibilities fall within several major categories. First of all, is to make sure that the guidance that we receive for our program's execution, it takes place every day throughout the 56 advising centers that I oversee. So making sure that programming is aligned to not only Education USA's priorities, goals, and objectives, but also what our U.S. mission, our embassy, our consulates in country also have as priorities, and then of course the host institution of the many Education USA advising centers that we have throughout Mexico. With that, of course, in mind, the main objective of what we do is to serve two specific audiences: students, on the one hand, those who are interested in pursuing any type of higher education opportunity in the US, and then higher education institutions in the United States who want to come closer to Mexican students in this case and want to spread the word about the programs and the opportunities that they offer for all of the students in the region. I also do a lot of training with advisors. I do a lot of strategizing in terms of what are the course of actions that we're going to take. And I also work very closely with our U.S. embassies throughout all of the countries in my portfolio to help them also advance their public diplomacy goals by continuing to task and support Education USA programming in country.
Thank you so much, Hazel and Maria Mercedes, for answering this first question. You two have very important roles that a lot of people benefit from everything that you guys plan and that you do. Thank you so much for sharing this. Throughout your career, which has been your most significant project and why?
Who do you want to start? It's Maria Mercedes' turn to start first.
Thank you, Hazel. So I guess maybe looking back, one of the, well, I have several. It's not easy to pick one thing or one project, and I can start with a time when I became a teaching assistant at university, and that allowed me to help other classmates to advance with their own studies. At that time, actually, I was the teaching assistant of a former Fulbrighter, and she inspired me to apply to the Fulbright program. So that's one, I would say, milestone in my professional path that I think impacted what I do today, because if I wouldn't have had applied to a Fulbright grant, I wouldn't have returned to Ecuador and have started working at the Fulbright Commission as an Education USA advisor 20 years ago. So so that was a special moment, and I do think that because of that experience, I've been able to work towards helping so many students. In my role through the Fulbright Commission in Ecuador, one of the priorities that we had was to increase or at least bring to an equilibrium the percentage of male versus female grantees that we had. And so we designed several campaigns that would allow us to encourage more women, and especially in fields such as STEM, where we know male dominates the field and we don't have a lot of female students in those fields of study. So we did a lot of campaigning and designed several projects to increase the number of applications, qualified applicants to those. But eventually, during my tenure at the Fulbright Commission, as you read already, I became the acting executive director, and during that time, I was able to implement two very important programs, in my opinion. One was focused on seminars for minorities. So we worked with indigenous students or Afro-Ecuadorians who never had an opportunity to even explore the pathway of studying abroad. And so we implemented several of these seminars year to year, and I'm very proud of that. I remain friends with all of the participants of the program. They're now adults. They were kids when that program took place. And then the other, of course, big project for me during the time when I was in the commission was to implement the ETA program, which was a new program to Ecuador. It was a program that other Fulbright commissions around the world had it. And what this represented was that young Americans would come to Ecuador to teach English and engage with younger students and generations and populations around them. And that, I think, has had a very positive impact on the way that Ecuadorians see exchanges and the opportunity to pursue studies abroad. So that was during that time. But in my role as a REAC, I think that, again, there are so many experiences that I could pinpoint, but I do feel proud of the work that we did as a team with Fulbright, with Comexus, with the U.S. Embassy, and many other players and associations during the FOBESI period and Proyecta 100,000, where we started doing educational fairs around Mexico to bridge the gap between the knowledge that Mexican students would have about the diversity of what is offered through higher education in the United States. I feel, or what I found when I came to Mexico, is that there was a lot of recognition of very specific institutions in the US, but there were so many, as you know, there are 4,700 options out there in the United States, and students recognize only not even 10% of those institutions. And so the work that we have done together, we've been able to increase awareness of other options, and from them develop projects such as capacity building workshops for partnerships, for institutional partnerships, and also, the whole training that we do for advisors, and to help them increase the services, the quality of the services, and the support that as a network we can provide to the students who are interested here in Mexico.
Thank you, Maria Mercedes, for sharing that. Now let's hear from you, Hazel.
Thank you, Yandy. Well, I am going to build on this answer from Stephanie's previous conference and from Maria Mercedes' answer. And I would start by saying that similar to Maria Mercedes, it's very difficult to choose one particular project. And that is, this is because of many reasons. On the one side, and remembering what Stephanie said, as a woman, there are many projects going on in my life, and of course I have the family side and the mother side that are, I wouldn't say projects, but that are parts of my life that are important. And of course, my family is something that makes me very proud. So I would put that as part of my I would say as one of my biggest achievements. But then comes the other part, the professional part. And in the professional part, there are many sides to it. One that I enjoy a lot and that I have chosen to continue to engage is teaching. And as you mentioned before, I've taught for over 20 years. And this is very important for me. I didn't know that this was going to be a way of also enhancing understanding between Mexico and the United States. But as a teacher of U.S. politics, I really hope that my students, that some of them will eventually become members of the Mexican Foreign Service or work in institutions that function in both countries. And my hope is that whatever I teach them really serves them as future professionals. On the other side, as Comexus director, I have to say that my most important project is the current project that I'm on. And it's not only one project. Thankfully or happily, we have cycles, and every cycle presents new opportunities. As a binational institution, because we are established by both governments, we follow the priorities and the projects of both governments as partners. And I am happy, very happy to say that the Commission is one of two binational institutions that answer to these priorities. So of course, every time the governments identify an area or an issue that is important for both of them, we have an opportunity to work on that project. And that is very exciting and very fulfilling, I would say, because that allows us to create new programs, to think about new ways of really tackling those issues that both governments have identified. And then, of course, we have the other part that are our grantees. And of course, working with the grantees and making sure that they are successful in their applications, in their studies, in their research projects, in their teachings, in their books that they are writing or the papers that they're writing, for us is very important. I think that is something that for me is a very important project. And of course, recognizing that we are a team and that as a team, we work on those projects, and that I want to be a good leader and a good example for the team is also important. So I would say that my most important project is the one that I'm working on, not forgetting that all that we have done in the past, of course, leads us to this moment. And also because that means that the next most important project is the one that is going to come tomorrow. So I would end with that.
Thank you for sharing about your projects and everything you have accomplished, and some of the things you're still currently working on. So the next question is a little bit just as a follow-up question now that you have mentioned the projects and things that you have accomplished. But now let's talk about why do you think it's important to strengthen the ties of cooperation between Mexico and the United States, since you mentioned the roles that you have, and I think you two play a very important role in strengthening the ties of cooperation between these two countries. So Hazel, if you would like to start first. Thank you.
Of course, and maybe I will start with a little bit of a personal story. When I was doing my undergrad studies, the world countries were defining relations in terms of regions, and the European Union was a very important development happening internationally, and other regions starting coming together. And of course, North America was coming together, and NAFTA was about to be signed. So now you know how old I am too. But when that happened, and I was studying my undergrad, I happened to be a research assistant at the ITAM, and they were developing different conferences, seminars, and materials for different members of the Mexican society in trying to teach them about the US. And I have to say that the head of that department at the time was a Fulbright alum, and he understood very well that Mexicans needed to understand the United States better. And to my surprise, and I'm not that old, not a lot of people knew about the United States at that time. So I realized that it was important to study the United States more deeply. So I decided to apply for a grant, for a Fulbright grant, and go to the US and study the US government, and then come back and help my fellow Mexican citizens in some way learn about the US. Some years later, life took me to Comexus as the executive director. And now more than ever, I still think that it's important, not only for Mexicans to know about the US, but for the US citizens to know about Mexico. We share a very long border. We all know that. More than 3,000 miles border. We have a very, very, very intense commerce. If you add the commerce that we have with some border states like California or Texas, they are even larger. That commerce is even larger than the commerce that the United States has with countries combined, with Japan, Germany, France combined. And I'm only talking about 1 or 2 states in the United States. Mexico is the #1 commerce partner for 25 out of the 50 states, and for the others, we're either second or third. So that relation is very important. Of course, we cannot also forget about the populations that we share. There are more than 14 million Mexicans living in the United States and almost 2 million Americans living in Mexico. So, and of course, we share a lot of challenges together as well. We share challenges in terms of environment, we share challenges in terms of public health, we share challenges in terms of security, migration, I mean, you name it. So of course, it's very important for both societies to know about each other, to learn together, to understand together, and to think together how to tackle these challenges that we have. So happily, being executive director of the commission gives me the opportunity to identify those individuals on both sides of the border, and together with the team and together with Education USA, help them grow as persons and as professionals, and help them network amongst themselves to really help this bilateral relation.
Thank you, Hazel. Maria Mercedes.
Thank you, Yandy. Yes, well, I don't think I have much to add to what Hazel has shared with us, except for the educational piece, because of course we want the North America region to achieve all of these reasons that Hazel shared with us, and we do it, and we believe that education for Education USA is the main conduit to sending or helping Mexican students have an experience to live the US culture and to learn, to practice, not only to get a degree, but also to have an experience to understand the way that Americans think, that Americans work, that Americans have fun, that Americans do business, and all of the things that are going to be necessary for them when they come back to Mexico to continue strengthening and progressing with all of the projects and opportunities that will continue to exist between the two countries. The dynamics that exist between Mexico and the US are unique. There's only one other country in the world that may claim that they have that uniqueness, and that would be Canada, because they are the only other country that shares a border with the United States. But I would say that the Mexico-US relation, just the dynamic of what happens and every day, every minute, every second between the two countries, and how what happens in one country and the other one affects each other, and what is going to happen next. Right now, there are approximately 13,000 Mexican students enrolled in programs in the United States, and we hope that those 13,000, and we hope to increase that number, of course, because as many more Mexicans have the opportunity and the experience, then that's only going to help Comexus and the US Embassy and the Mexican government itself with their own goals and priorities and objectives. For example, right now, a lot of focus on certain sectors and industries such as energy or health, and so many opportunities to continue contributing to the growth of Mexico as a country. And on the other side, of course, the US students who come to Mexico, approximately 3,000 in last year, and that's the last statistic that we had. Of course, affected by the pandemic, the number was reduced, but we still hosted 3,000 US students in Mexico. And I would say that that even has a greater impact, because when you think about how international students look at study abroad, international students from the rest of the world are eager and enthusiastic to travel and go to other places. The statistic for US students who study abroad is only 3% of the entire student population. So actually, US students have less of an opportunity to travel abroad, or are interested because of many different factors, right? Including a financial factor that, it has a cost to study abroad, or the setup in which the linkages and the partnerships are set up between institutions in the US or the receiving institution in country, or what is available in terms of support services for US students to do study abroad. So even more so importantly, for those Americans who do not have the experience and the opportunity to go outside the United States, having close contact with Mexican students on campus is going to have such a great impact on their lives, and it's going to help them also widen their perspective, their impressions, the opinion that they have about citizens of other parts of the world. And we know that that is something that is so important nowadays. So again, that's the only thing I can add to what Hazel already shared with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and also for sharing, for starting your thoughts, Hazel, and sharing your personal experience, and also Maria Mercedes for sharing those important statistics that, of course, we might be familiar with, but I know a lot of people in our audience this might be the first time that they participate in one of our Education USA events, and the first time that they have contact with advisors, and to listen these statistics is really, it was really helpful. Thank you. And following up with what I just mentioned, that we might have a few people that it's the first time that they have contact with us. I want to ask you, what opportunities are there to promote academic exchange between the two countries? Maria Mercedes, if you would like to start first.
Well, I will begin, but I know that the most interesting part is with Hazel through the multiple programs that the Fulbright Commission is able to offer. But on the Education USA side, of course, our program focuses on information giving and the support service. So hand-holding each individual who's interested in completing an application process, who's interested at any type of higher education level program. So that could be pursuing a full degree within the United States, an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, or a doctoral degree, or it could also be related to the application process of short-term experiences, such as study abroad, an internship, and even for traditionally, we do focus on supporting students who are applying for higher education level. But we also support those who are younger, but who are interested in engaging in an exchange opportunity, such as potentially transferring to a boarding school or an independent school in the US, or participating in summer camps, anything that has to do or is related to skills development or enhancement of that individual, who has the ultimate goal to eventually apply to a US college or university. Then we provide support to those younger audiences for that same reason, because we know and we want them to have a well-educated pathway into going to through the application process for a higher education level degree in the United States. So our services, as you described them earlier today, Yandy, maybe we have some newcomers since then, but you can follow us on our website and learn more about our information sessions, our one-on-one advising services, also a lot of the workshops, tailor-made events, webinars that are designed to help every student develop a skill or learn something new. So something that is not just, oh, this is the data from the university and this is, these are the numbers, but we are also focusing on the individuals. I think one important thing to mention about Education USA and what differentiates our services from many other counseling services that are or exist out there is the fact that we are a student-centered program. 100%, we focus on the student needs. And what does this mean? We don't have agreements with any institution. We represent all 4,700 higher education institutions that are accredited in the United States. And with that being such a large number, we have to start with the student and help the student identify what he or she wants to do or thinks they want to do, or identify what they're good at. And then from there, help them build on a research process on what are going to be the institutions that are going to be a best fit for them. We are not interested in supporting a student to apply to an institution where they're not going to be successful at. That is not good for anyone. If a student has a bad experience at their campus, most likely they're going to not finish those studies, and they're gonna either come back home feeling disappointed and having to start all over again. So we have this service where we focus on the individual and help and guide. We empower the individual to own his or her own search project and help them identify the tools so that they know what is going to be best for them and their families. So, but as you know, that's Education USA, and I'll pass the word on to Hazel so she can tell us about what Fulbright does.
Thank you, Maria Mercedes and Yandy. So we have many different programs of grants. We have 19 different programs. As I mentioned before, we have grants for 4 categories, let's say, for students, mainly that want to do graduate studies. And these are, I'm gonna refer mainly to Mexican, for grants for Mexicans, because I would imagine that most of our audience today are Mexicans. So our biggest program is for graduate degrees in the United States, that is masters and PhDs, but we also have grants for postdoctoral students, for students that are finishing their thesis, their PhD thesis, and that would benefit from spending some months in the United States doing research to finish their dissertations. Of course, we have grants also for scholars to do research and or teach in the United States. And then we have grants for teachers. We have grants for teachers of languages that would enhance their teaching abilities by teaching Spanish in US colleges, but we also have grants for teachers of other disciplines that would have a project and would have time to develop that project with a university professor and hands-on. And finally, we have grants for professionals. We have 2 types of grants for professionals. We have grants for individuals that wanna do an internship and take some courses at the graduate level. That's called our Binational Business Program. And then we have grants for mid-career individuals that could use the Humphrey Grant for professional enhancement while they are already in the workforce, and could use some refreshing, let's say, of their knowledge or even their abilities, and of course their networks. So it's a good number of grants, and if anyone has a question, I could answer specific questions about the specific grants that we have. But I have to say that beyond the grants that we have, there are many things that make the Fulbright Garcia Robles grants different. And that is, on one side, hand in hand with Education USA, help to apply for our grants. I am not going to sugarcoat it. Having a Fulbright grant might not be easy, but the fact that there are 27 centers around the country with professionals as the Education USA advisors that will help an individual really make their application a good application for a Fulbright grant really does make a difference. And that help is, of course, not only good, professional, caring, but free also. So that is very important. And on the other side, the follow-up, once you are admitted as a grantee, the work that we do with each one of our candidates or each one of our grantees is very important. I think this is what makes the Fulbright grants different from other grants in Mexico. There are no other grants where you will have this advising for selecting the right programs for each individual according to their plan, to their professional plans. And also the fact that during the grant, once the grantees are in the United States, there is also follow-up with either events to network with other Fulbrighters from the world that are in the United States, or help from advisors that will follow up with how many courses you're taking, is your visa on the right track, are your studies going well, would you need help in some of the courses that you're taking, and we will help working with the institution in getting you that extra help with professors and the such. And I think that makes the whole difference in the world for our grantees, that they know that we are there the whole time. And of course, once the grant is over, you become part of the Fulbright family and on a global network that will always appreciate that you have Fulbright quality, that you have leadership, and that you will move on in the world doing good things. So I think that is also important to mention.
Thank you for sharing about these academic exchange opportunities that exist for Mexican students. We have shared some important links in the chat for everyone. We shared the Fulbright Commission website if you are interested in reviewing these programs that Hazel mentioned. And also, we also shared a little bit about what Education USA is and how you can get in contact with the advisors in Mexico. And I wish I knew about Education USA before, a few years ago when I was preparing to start an undergraduate degree. That would have made my life easier back then. But okay, now I get to talk about my own experience and encourage everyone to contact Education USA. I would like just to add one more question before we move to the Q&A section. And you two mentioned a little bit about your studies, and I also reviewed that when reading your bios. But can you tell us how have your studies in the United States helped you in your professional career and help you in the current roles that you have? Hazel?
Of course, it's a little bit of cheating because I went to the US to study the US to enhance my career and to bring back this information for my fellow Mexicans. I was not sure how I was going to do it, to tell you the truth. When I left to do the master's degree, I was not sure I was going to be a teacher. And of course, at that point, I never imagined that I would come back to Comexos eventually. Of course, it has helped a lot. In deep down, I'm still a student. I try to learn every day, and I am a teacher, so I need to inform myself. And of course, the information that I gathered about how the US political system works, and the fact that I had studied international relations and it's a political science degree in the end, makes me understand how those interactions can take place between the two governments. And now I work in an institution established by both governments, so that of course helps me a lot. It helps me a lot also to understand different dynamics that happen in the United States and that affect higher education in the US, and of course, what affects higher education in Mexico as well, the different policies, the different actors that are there, and that makes me, that gives me tools. And finally, knowing or being able to follow developments on both sides of the border also helps me have good conversations with the board of the commission when trying to build on plans for the next cycles. So I would say that the most important thing that helps me do my job is the education that I got in the United States while on my grant.
Well, for me, when I went to pursue my master's degree, I had a big plan, which was to do public relations for an international organization. And so I studied the United Nations, I studied the World Bank, and that was what before starting my studies, where I was intended to go. That was my preference. But then because of the classes that I took, and more importantly, the format of US education, which is very different to what I had received back home, and obtaining all of those critical thinking skills that you really have no option but to develop when you are in a US classroom setting and you have debates every day and you have to sustain your arguments in an educated way. Then of course, you know, I started to analyze what my choices had been or what I thought my choices would be in the future. And so critical thinking, I think it's something that is so unique to the environment, the learning environment in the United States, and that is with me every day. Every decision that I make, I follow the process that I was educated to do through access to higher education in the U.S. Also, of course, problem solving, I think, you know, is another skill, and with such a large portfolio that I oversee every day, I think you have to have that as a skill, because otherwise you would be sinking every single day, because there are so many requests and for support from all of the different centers, from the host institutions, from the post. And so managing expectations from all of your stakeholders, again, is another skill that I think I was able to potentially, or perhaps I was born with it, but through my experience being in the US, and not only through my master's degree program, but I also had an opportunity to do academic practical training, which was a practicum I did for 18 months after I graduated, with an organization that actually supported students to come and do internships, professional internships in the US. And so I learned a lot through that experience, that complementary experience as well. And so I think that today, when I have to communicate, when I have to support somebody, when I have to be emotionally intelligent about how are we going to move forward and what next steps we are going to take, is thanks to that education that I had in the US, that liberal arts foundation, that soft skills focus that US education has in an individual, I use every day with my team, when I communicate, when I try to meet expectations from everyone who is around me. So I would say that that's one of the biggest pluses that I obtained during my education in the US.
Thank you so much for your thoughts and for sharing some of the skills that you will consider that women also need to develop in order to lead academic and cultural cooperation programs like you do. Before we leave and before we finish this conversation, I would like to give briefly the time to Edith. We will have our section of Q&A. So Edith, thank you, and the time is yours.
Thank you, Yandy. Thank you, Hazel and Maria Mercedes. I would like to start with one of the comments that one of the attendees did in here. It says, my complete recognition for the work that both of you do through your own institutions, Comexus and Education USA, because that encourages people to continue learning and preparing themselves. So yeah, I think we all join in that recognition, and we thank you for that. Okay, then another attendee is asking, did you expect to have this type of position when you studied in the United States? She says that she has heard that a degree in the US can increase the chances to have a better job back home. What would you say?
I don't know. I thought maybe I planned to have a job where I would work on getting more understanding between the two countries. I didn't think that I would be working at Comexus, to tell you the truth, when I left for the US. I will say, I have to say something. Of course, that I have said that my degree helped me and helps me every day for my job. But I would take the second part of this question, or the second statement of this question, a little bit further. I would say any study always helps you to get a better job and to get better position. And it is because we have great higher education institutions in Mexico that prepare individuals with very high standard, with very good education and skills, that these individuals can have success in the United States when they go and they further their studies. So I would say that it is not one or the other, but they complement each other. And it is important to recognize that.
So for me, my first job was in a bank, and I was a teller, and I did customer service all day long. And early on, I realized that I was good at that. I was good at talking to people, connecting to people. Some of what Stephanie was sharing earlier, you know, the ability to listen, to process, and then provide good, kind piece of advice to every single person that stepped in front of me. And from then until today, that is how I like to work with everybody that I engage with. I had a plan. I, of course, knew or identified that public relations was something that I really enjoyed, and in an international context. So going to the United States and having the opportunity to complete a master's degree only allowed me to clarify what I wanted to do forward. As I shared earlier, I thought, oh, I would go and work for the United Nations. And then I changed my mind for many reasons, but I figured I wanted to go into something that was more direct in working with people every day. And that's why I was an advisor for 10 years. And I think some of the happiest moments I lived through the good news that our students received. For example, our Opportunity Funds grantees. The Opportunity Funds program is the only scholarship program that Education USA has, and is designed to support brilliant students but with financially challenged backgrounds to complete the application process. And the scholarship that we provide is for that period, for the application process, to upfront all of the costs associated with that. And then, of course, as Education USA advisors, we would have to lobby with the institutions so that they would be interested enough to award the student a full scholarship. And it's not just full tuition and fees, but also living expenses for our students. And so things like that, you know, that you're making a difference every day and that you're going to change somebody's life and somebody's future. I would definitely say that I had that realization through all of the things and the projects that I was able to write when I was in graduate school, and then my academic practical training experience. And from then on, that's what I have done. Now I don't meet with students anymore. I do meet or help at least one student with their advising process every day, but I work with a network of 56 fantastic advisors out there, and empowering them and training them to do their work the right way. It's something that brings me a lot of joy. I don't think that my education in the US helped me to be in this role. I think that it was a series of elements that were there for me, and then it just crystallized or materialized through the experience that I had and what I was able to realize was what I wanted to do for the rest of my career, right? For now, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Maybe I'll change. I'll have a change of heart and pursue a completely different career. But
We hope we hope you don't do that. But okay, we will be there also for you. Well, and now that you both have mentioned it, the different programs that you run, the Opportunity Funds Scholarship, the Fulbright Garcia Robles Scholarship, another attendee is asking, what is the profile that these programs are looking for? Because he mentions that he is not sure if he's a good candidate to study in the US. So how could you summarize the abilities, the skills, the profile that a person needs to be a good student in the United States?
I think if he is thinking about studying in the US, that's the first and most important point, of course, that the want to do it. I think you have to start somewhere, and that's a very good place. Of course, having some language proficiency is always good, but there are language programs in the US. We do have some programs that will help individuals that have a mid level of English for that want to do graduate degree, but it really depends what you want to do. We have 19 different programs, and of course, it really depends what your profile is. If you're a teacher, if you're an individual that wants to do graduate degree, if you are already a graduate degree student and want to finish your PhD dissertation or want to do a postdoc, or if you are a scholar, or if you're an individual that is really not interested in getting any degree in the US and that you just want to have an internship, but you have to have finished your undergraduate degree and have to have good English level. So I will end here and let Maria Mercedes explain why Education USA is so important, because I think there is no better place to find if you have a good profile than Education USA.
Thank you, Hazel. Well, for an Education USA advisor or any center around the world, anyone who has the interest and the goal and the objective to eventually engage with an opportunity to study in the US is a student for us, or a potential student for us. And through this student-centered process of advising that I mentioned earlier, where we focus on you, your needs, where you are, where you want to be in a few years or next year, etc., then we'll guide you in identifying what are your strengths right now, what and how could you potentially use or dedicate those strengths into in the future. And then we will start the whole conversation process of, is this really the right fit for you? Because many people may think, yes, we want to study in the US, I want to end up there, but this may not be the right path or the idea that you have in your mind, which most times is formed by somebody else's experience. You have a relative, you know somebody else who went and had a great experience, and so you think that you have to follow the same exact path, apply to the same institution, do the same degree because that person is very successful now, and he or she is a role model for me. Well, that's not right. And through an Education USA advising process, we will help you realize that while it's incredible and amazing that your relative, your friend, your supervisor had his or her own great experience, you can also have your own, but focusing on what you really want to do. And if you're not ready yet to pursue that path, then we'll tell you exactly what are the steps that you need to take in the meantime before you can actually start an application process. This could be anywhere between 12 months or as early as maybe 3-4 years. The earlier that you start to prepare to pursue and apply to an academic program in the US, the better that it is for you, and more chances that we have to help you mold into what a strong candidate would be in the eyes of an institution. And then, of course, there's the other factor that we always need to take into account, and that is that the institution that is going to admit you is going to have their own set of qualifications and qualities that they're going to be expecting from an international student. So we'll also have that conversation about why this institution and what kind of profile of students they're looking for, and how you are or not a good fit for that program. So that's kind of how we will guide you through the advising process.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. That was the last question that I had in here. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your answers and all your advices.
Thank you, Edith. And before we finish and we say our goodbyes, please remember to come back tomorrow. We have prepared more conferences and conversations with more great speakers. You can review the agenda in the bios in our website. And all I have to say is thank you so much again, Maria Mercedes and Hazel, for being here today with us and for sharing your own experiences and your points of view. We know that all you do and everything you've done has a great impact in the academic and the cultural cooperation programs that you oversee. Thank you for taking time of your busy agenda to be here with us. Is there anything else you would like to add?
I would just like to congratulate the Education USA team for putting this event together, and thank all of those attendants here for their interest and for keeping on with us in our conversation. And of course, thank you to Maria Mercedes for that conversation.
Well, thank you very much, Hazel. It's always great to share a space with you and learn from you even more. Every conversation we have, I learn something new, and that's just very enriching on a professional but also on a personal level. But of course, I want to thank my team for organizing this great event. Here's another example of that mission of mine to empower my advisors. These 3 advisors, all females, put together a proposal and said, we want to do this. These may be a little bit ambitious, but we want to have these high-profile women coming together and sharing their stories with our student audiences, and here we are today. So I congratulate the team, of course, as well, and thank all of the participants as well. I think that you being here today is the first step for you to also have a great career. You can also be happy. You can start with this path right now. Well, maybe tomorrow. You can reach out to your Education USA advisor and start asking the right questions and start preparing, because if this is something that you really want, we are all here to support you, and we want to empower you to complete that path successfully. So don't be shy. Contact your Education USA advisor, and much success to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you again tomorrow, and we hope you have a great night. Thank you.